Hi, I'm Ronald the Rules Lawyer, and Paizo has just released a PDF previewing the changes in the Pathfinder Remaster, what I'm calling version 2.1. The first two books are coming out in November. So I'm going to go over the major things that stood out to me and were the most interesting things to me, and have some editorial comments as well. So to remind us all, it is a new edition, as I call it, however a 2.1 because the fundamental math is unchanged. One major motivation for it is Wizards of the Coast's policy towards the open gaming license and the danger of and the need to protect themselves by moving away from language and other things that could be a basis for accusing Paizo of violating Wizards of the Coast's intellectual property rights. It appears to me they're following a lawyer's advice to be very safe. If there's no reason not to make yourself safer, why not do it? But this occasion has also been seen by the Paizo designers as an opportunity to revisit the design and make incremental improvements to the game. Are they succeeding? Well, we can't really know until the books come out in November, but this is a preview of what we'll see, so we have some tidbits to evaluate and get upset over. As some folks clearly are being, I saw the discussion on the Pathfinder subreddit, and there was a prevailing opinion that the preview is going to nerf spellcasters. Are they? Well, I'll cover that when I get to those parts of the PDF, but I'll say this for now. It reminds me of some of the upset and anxiety around an early playtest for the next edition for D&D, removing feats that gave martial characters plus 10 to damage. They were saying it was a nerfing of martial characters. I thought that reaction was premature, but I also thought Wizards of the Coast needed to be clearer in conveying their design goals and why they were making those changes. I think there is some deficit here as well, that Paizo could be a little more transparent on what they're trying to do with some spells. So we'll see. What I'm going to cover is largely going to be in the order of what is covered in the PDF, basically changes in terms, the removal of alignment, changes to focus spells, the removal of wizard schools, changes to spells, and changes to creature abilities. All right, so here's a list of a lot of the words are going to be changing in the remaster. First, ability modifier, strength, dexterity, wisdom, is now going to be called attribute modifier. I see their justification, which is to make them more obviously different from the term abilities, which is used throughout the game. I like this. Ability rolls off the tongue better, but then you kind of have to say ability score for someone to know what you're talking about in the game. Attribute is shorter. So thumbs up. Attack of opportunity is now going to be called reactive strike. Flat-footed is now going to be called off guard, which I think makes more sense to people new to the game, and I think is more in keeping with the fact that it lowers your AC but not your reflex saves. I like it. The material plane is now the universe. Metamagic is now spell shape, which I think is more evocative. Negative and positive are now void and vitality respectively, and they give an explanation for this. But when I ran a game recently for people new to Pathfinder and I said they took negative damage, they joked that they were healed. So I can see the reason for this change, that negative and positive, we may be used to these terms, but for new players, not necessarily. I am unhappy, though, that they both start with the letter V. Generally, I don't like opposites having some kind of superficial similarity. Spell level being spell rank is a welcome change. No longer will level refer to two scales within Pathfinder, and counteract level will also be called counteract rank. There's a lot of other little changes to move away from the OGL, but other small, practical, appreciated changes that you can see if you look closely. But this is a summary, so I'll move on. For attribute boosts, if you already have a +4 or an 18 in the current system, and you get one boost, that doesn't increase your modifier. It would increase your 18 to a 19. It looks like there will be a box to check on the new character sheet to indicate that you have a partial boost. Something I was also surprised by was I had thought that ancestries were all going to be universally having 2 free boosts like humans currently, but that does not look like what's going to happen. It says dwarves will get an attribute boost to their constitution and wisdom, and it says that attribute flaws will still exist and will likely come from your ancestry. Alignment will be removed and be essentially replaced by edicts and anathema. No longer will every creature need to be placed on these two abstract, universal, metaphysical axes. So law and chaos are gone as opposing abstract forces. Arguably, you can say good and evil are now represented by holy and unholy. However, that status is reserved to select creatures, such as devils, celestials, or clerics who choose to sanctify. And sanctification is the process by which a character who worships a deity can make it so that they're more effective against the opposite. So let's say a holy cleric wants to be more effective against unholy creatures. But there's a trade-off in that unholy creatures also are likely to do more harm to that cleric. Also, some deities will say that you must choose to sanctify, whereas others will say that you can choose. Gods like Caden Kalian. Edicts and anathema are also voluntary, and you're encouraged to take them. They're kind of like backgrounds from D&D 5e. They give guidance and prompts for your roleplay. And it looks like ancestries will have some listed for them. So, for example, popular edicts for the orc ancestry would be to become even stronger, share knowledge you won through pain, destroy the undead. For most characters, these are entirely optional, and it doesn't sound like there's any limit to how many you can take. But as is implied, there is no mechanical consequence to violating these edicts or anathemas. Since alignment is going away, so is alignment damage, which under the current rules had the problem of doing 0 damage to creatures that are not of the opposite alignment, limiting its use. They are now replaced by spirit damage, which affects spiritual essence. And what I found interesting here was the example they give. It said that spirit damage does not harm creatures that have no spirit, such as constructs. And that made me think to myself, we already have damage that only affects the living, which currently is called negative damage and will be called void damage. So how is this different? Well, this obviously affects ghosts who are not alive. It's going after the spiritual essence, even to the point that if you are possessed by somebody else and someone casts spirit damage on you, it only affects the possessor, not you. But anyway, that stood out to me, that this idea of spirit is different from being alive. So I thought that was worth pointing out. But the key thing about spirit damage is that it now affects all creatures. And spirit damage, many effects that do it, also have the sanctified, holy, or unholy trait, meaning that if you are sanctified, you will do extra damage when dealing with the opposite. So while the limited usefulness of alignment damage is gone, the ability to trigger weaknesses is not. It is now clear that archetypes will require you to take a total of 3 feats in that archetype before you can get a dedication feat from another one, because it's now part of the dedication trait itself. Druids no longer have an anathema against metal, and their anathema is now replaced with the idea of not consuming more natural resources than you require to live comfortably. So basically, be a conservationist. No fanatical superstition about touching metal. That only happened to be about wearing metal armor, but not holding metal weapons, whatever. It was weird. The 8 spell schools are being removed, so that does away with the arcane school choice that wizards currently get. They now get a different kind of school that gives a curriculum. They look like they operate much like arcane schools currently, except that you now get, instead of a cantrip and 1 first rank spell, you get 1 cantrip and 2 first rank spells at level 1. And this is one of the controversial things being discussed. The school gives you a list of spells that are essentially in 1 paragraph, instead of the many more spells that the arcane schools currently give. I personally think that this is a positive change. I think part of the negative reaction is the belief now that they're nerfing casters due to some of the spell changes we're about to see. People seem to be okay with this before. Like here we have something that's pretty thematic and focused. Here it's to befuddle lesser minds with figments and illusions. Currently, those spells would be enchantment spells, but the enchantment school also has other spells that do other things, like Zone of Truth or removing fear from an ally. Another example being the School of Conjuration being about summoning creatures, but also being about teleportation. I kind of like how this makes you more thematic by limiting your choices relatively to what we have now. And also, they can make a lot of new cool schools that are not limited by the number 8. I also imagine it's been a design headache. They have needed to keep the 4 magical traditions balanced in terms of their spell selections, and to have to juggle that goal with keeping the 8 arcane schools balanced is probably too much from a design perspective. Also, it says you're not strictly limited to those spells. The GM might allow you to swap or add other spells if they strongly fit the theme. On the one hand, maybe this leaves things open to argument. However, strongly fits the theme is a pretty clear directive. It's like the uncommon trait. Like, you really have to argue to the GM that it strongly fits the theme. The GM has the back of that wording. So no, I don't think your zone of truth spell would befuddle minds. However, it is a little frustrating that the current OGL word of enchantment and this word mentalism, that switching those 2 words is probably more accurate to describe what they respectively do. Plus, there's the fact there's a lot of spells that you can't really pigeonhole into one of the 8 schools. It honestly kind of feels like alignment to me in that it's a bit vestigial. And if we're only keeping it to accommodate the wizard, maybe we got to come up with something else for the wizard. I saw some discussion about people wanting detect magic to still detect the school of the spell. Well, that's one of the spells we're about to see, so I'll get to that as we go through the spells. Next is focus spells. Now it no longer requires a torturous reading of forums and rules to figure out how many focus points you have. The number of focus points you have is the number of focus spells you know. I assume that excludes focus cantrips. Also, you can, if you have 2 or 3 focus points, get all of those back if you have enough time between combats. This is going to be an increase in power of those classes that have focus spells, which I think is being lost in the current panic about nerfing casters. Anyway, we'll get to that. I do wonder, though, what the fate of the Psychic is going to be, who is the only class currently that can restore 2 focus points between combats. I wonder if there's going to be anything to compensate for the fact that they no longer have that niche. All right, so now we go through the spells that are presented here. I think many of them to demonstrate changes in the names of spells, but also to demonstrate how they no longer are going to say verbal, somatic, material focus. Instead, they just give us the underlying traits that come up in combat. It's important to know whether you manipulate in order to provoke many reactions. However, what's not said here, and is unclear to me, is whether you need to be able to speak while casting the spell. Having the verbal trait clearly answered that question. If you are in a magically silent area, you couldn't cast that spell. But now that that trait's removed, it's not clear whether you have to speak in a strong voice while casting a spell, which is important if you're setting up an ambush and pre-buffing before a fight. I would like to get some clarity on that. Augury is essentially the same. Blazing Bolt is the new version of Scorching Ray. I'll move on to the next one. Basically, if I don't say anything about a spell, from my reading of it, and I did read it and compare it to the current, I did not see any changes. I may miss something here or there, but let me know in the comments. Breathe Fire is the renaming of Burning Hands. Cleanse Cuisine currently is Purify Food and Drink. This is a cooler name. I'm going to say that now. And it now has a range of 10 feet instead of touch. Plus, it makes your food delicious. So not only is it healthy and not poisoned, but it tastes good. They've also added the ability to affect more food. Detect Magic, we have the removal of spell schools. So in the 3rd rank version, we no longer detect the spell school of the highest rank magic effect. Instead, you actually learn what the rank or level of that effect is, which is very useful when trying to determine whether you should try to counteract something. And this is only 2 actions. You can use this in combat. And remember, you can ignore those effects that you're aware of. Another subtle change is that the wood trait is added to some spells as part of our expanding to 6 elements with Rage of Elements. Entangling Flora is the new version of Entangle. Environmental Endurance was Endure Elements. And Falling Stars is the remaster's version of Meteor Swarm. And unlike Meteor Swarm, you now have a choice of different damage types. You're not limited to a fire burst, which are asteroids. You can do air bursts for sonic, comets for cold, and plasma for electricity. So it is expanded in its versatility. Figment used to be ghost sound, but it's no longer limited to sound illusions. It can also do visual illusions. So this is D&D 5e's minor illusion cantrip that has been nicked and combined with ghost sound. This seems like a pretty useful cantrip to me, especially since, according to my reading of the rules, you have to actually interact or seek something to detect whether it's an illusion, and you're not necessarily going to know it might be an illusion to begin with. Fire Shield has a little change. Currently, it surrounds you with fire, and if any creature hits you with an unarmed attack or is adjacent to you and hits you in melee, they take fire damage. However, they have turned this into a shield. So they've taken the current name and actually made it literal. It says you can raise a shield, which will require yet another action apparently, and you have access to the shield block reaction even if you normally don't. It's only a +1 circumstance bonus to AC, and only when you shield block does that attacking creature take the fire damage. Now, this sounds at first like it's a nerf, but I'm not sure it is, honestly, because now you're able to absorb 10 damage of each strike, and it has 40 hit points, and there's no broken threshold. I looked at the stats, and this is basically the sturdy shield of your level at this time. So its effectiveness has been less about doing fire damage and more about soaking damage. Howling Blizzard used to be called Cone of Cold, and it does 10d6 damage instead of 12d6. However, they've given it a new version that costs 3 actions that lets you do a 30-foot burst within 500 feet. Because it's no longer named Cone of Cold, it doesn't have to be a cone. A little less damage, but a little more versatility. You might be able to fit more people in a burst, first of all. And it's bigger than a fireball. It also puts it in line with the fireball in terms of damage. Next is Ignition, which is our new version of Produce Flame, where you can do a ranged or melee attack with fire. And this is where a lot of the argument and controversy has come up. Currently, Produce Flame does 1d4 plus your spellcasting modifier. So if you max out your casting stat, which most caster mains will do, it will do an average of 6.5 damage. However, it's now reduced to 2d4 fire damage for those characters, which is an average of 5. If you do a melee attack, it is 7, which is almost the same, but still a little less. And people are saying that they are trying to nerf casters, and casters were already nerfed, and they hate casters, they love marshals. Those are the kinds of comments I'm seeing. I think that is an overreaction. Again, I think Paizo needs to be clearer on why they're making some changes, but we also need to ask ourselves why the change is being made before we jump to conclusions. And if I were to surmise, I think part of what's going on is that focus spells, which are more powerful than cantrips normally, are getting buffed. And we're going to be leaning more towards the idea that spellcasters use their focus spells in combat and rest in between. That is my theory. I don't know if I'm right. I would like to hear from Paizo because they should address these concerns, but that is what I'm thinking. And also, I think it also makes it more viable for somebody to dip into a caster. You may not have 18 or 16 even in your casting stat, but you'll do some decent damage with the cantrip. Next, we move on to Interplanar Teleport, which is our version of Plane Shift. It's essentially the same, however, it did raise a question in my mind because it says you need to have a certain item. So this will be represented under the current rules with requiring a material component. For that, you need to have a free hand under the current rules. What's unclear to me is whether items that require a material component or a focus component, now called locus, whether you need a free hand. It simply says you need to have a planar key. And I'm thinking, well, shouldn't you hold it? Next is Invoke Spirits, which seemed unchanged to me compared to the current version. Then Know the Way. This is Know Direction, which currently tells you what north is. However, they've added the ability to know the direction of some previous point you've been, some point in the last 24 hours. So they've added to the utility, in addition to changing the name to be a little more appropriate to it. Manifestation is now, well, you can call it a renamed Wish. However, what Wish currently does has been split into this spell and a ritual. This is the spell that lets you cast any lower rank spell of your choice within your tradition, or of any other tradition if it's 7th rank or lower. This replaces all the similar spells like Miracle and the others for the other magical traditions. However, what Wish has historically been in AD&D has been preserved and restored, I would say, in the Wish ritual, which is a 10th level ritual. It costs 100,000 gold. Historically, Wish was usually a pretty adversarial experience between the player and the GM, where the GM is expected to make the fates cruel towards that player, who must word their wish very carefully, and the fates often pull some kind of cruel joke if they weren't careful enough with their wording. This is now all resolved via the 4 degrees of success, and I am all for this. Basically, what I just described would be the critical failure effect. Failure does nothing. Success, your wish is granted, but there's going to be some unintended consequences or side effects. And it gives some examples that don't completely screw you over, such as taking riches from a well-known criminal to become super rich. Critical success has no drawbacks. So this is a nice use of the 4 degrees of success, and also brings us back to making Wish that truly awesome spell to kind of just change reality at a whim. Examples they give are to be very rich, or to destroy an entire kingdom, or ascend to divinity. We now can, by rule, if the GM allows it, but by rule, we now have in writing a way to become a god. Obviously, 100,000 gold is going to be not something you come by easily. This could be a huge, perhaps pinnacle event of an entire campaign. But I'm glad that the awesomeness of Old Wish is preserved within Pathfinder 2e. Then we have Mirage, which is hallucinatory terrain. Mountain Resilience is Stone Skin. Mystic Armor is Mage Armor. Nature's Pathway is Tree Stride, though it has the mental trait, I'm not sure why. That's the one that lets you go into a tree and exit another tree. Oaken Resilience is Bark Skin. One with Plants is Tree Shape, which currently lets you turn into a large tree. That's still here, turn into a plant. It doesn't have to be a tree now. But now it lets you merge with a plant, probably a tree, that is big enough to accommodate you, and like a dryad. And they've actually created some uniformity between this spell and one with stone. This is the Meld into Stone spell. Now they have made these two spells act identically, including having one with stone turn into a large rock. They both have this identical effects. One is plant, the other is stone. Peaceful Rest is Gentle Repose. Petrify is Flesh to Stone. And I said this on the Pathfinder subreddit. I like the fact, whenever I hear Flesh to Stone, I have to think for a second, oh, is it the opposite? And Petrify is crystal clear, that you are turning something into stone. Also, it's no longer limited to flesh. Moving away from that OGL term means it can be any organic material. So you can turn a plant creature, or anything else I'm not thinking of, into a statue. Planar Seal is Dimensional Lock. Revealing Light is Glitter Dust. However, they have incorporated part of the utility of Fairy Fire. Instead of just debuffing invisible enemies, concealed enemies no longer can be concealed now. Runic Body and Runic Weapon can be considered together. These are Magic Weapon and Magic Fang. Not only do they make your strikes as if they have the +1 striking runes, but there are heightened versions to make them +2 greater striking and +3 major striking. See the Unseen is obviously See Invisibility, but it has more usefulness now. It's not simply to ignore invisibility and making them concealed to you, but it also lets you see incorporeal creatures who are phased through an object from within 10 feet of its surface as blurry shapes hiding in the stone. And also, it looks like you have a +2 status bonus in disbelieving illusions. That is new. And another case where no longer using the old name allows them to expand its usefulness. Here are the speaking spells next. We currently have Speak with Animals and Speak with Plants and Stone Tell, now Speak with Stones. They now all act the same way. Speak with Plants was rank 4, now it's rank 3. Speak with Stones was rank 6, now it's rank 5. And they also have had their durations increased from 10 minutes to 1 hour. They also have heightened versions that let you make them 8 hours long, but they did not do that with Speak with Animals, which I think was an oversight. Next is the spell that I hate. This is Longstrider. It's now called Tailwind, and I've banned it in my campaigns. First, context. I, the rules lawyer, tend to attract players who think tactically and optimize their characters. I wonder why. But Longstrider is a way to become, if you heighten it to second level, have a plus 10 foot status bonus to your speed for 8 hours. Now, granted, it has to be on yourself, but any character with trick magic item can buy a magic wand, 160 gold, it's a level 5 item, to essentially have plus 10 status bonus to their speed for pretty much the entire adventuring day. It kept coming up in my campaigns after characters got to a certain level. Because if you think about it, you just need a skill feat, trick magic item, to get a plus 10 bonus to your speed, a permanent one, whereas the fleet spell requires one of your general feats to get a 5 foot increase in speed. Plus, given how important increases in speed can be, fleet is one of the strongest and maybe the most popular general feat. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. This just seemed like an auto pick for players who were optimization minded. And I don't like having auto picks in my Pathfinder. So I'm disappointed to see there hasn't been a change to this. Honestly, I think it's valuable as a 10-minute spell. For comparison, the Greater Cheetah's Elixir gives you the same bonus, but only for 1 hour, and it costs almost 75% as much as this permanent item, as the Wand of Longstrider, or now Tailwind. Anyway, rant over. Moving on. Tanglevine is our Tanglefoot. Telekinetic Hand is Mage Hand. Thunderstrike seems to be our version of Shocking Grasp. Now, this has a superficial resemblance to Shocking Grasp currently, which is a touch spell currently. You have to do an attack roll. It does 2d12 electricity damage, and if they have metal armor, you have a bonus on your attack, and they can take persistent electricity damage. Here, the spell is basically reimagined as a lightning strike. It does 1d12 electricity damage instead of 2d12, but it adds sonic damage, 1d4. So it does less damage on that initial strike. However, it has a 120-foot range now, and it calls for a reflex save, which, even if they succeed on their save, they'll take half damage. So if they have a weakness to electricity, you're golden. Or sonic damage, which I don't know if many do. Never mind. But gone is the persistent electricity damage. However, for those wearing metal armor or are made of metal, you do make them clumsy 1 for 1 round, which, some people would say is really good. So I think this is a wash in terms of it being a nerf or a buff. It's just a different spell now. And it doesn't require, if you're a spellcaster, for you to be in something's face to affect it. Translocate is now our version of Dimension Door. True Speech is Tongues. Vapor Form is Gaseous Form. Wrathful Storm is Storm of Vengeance. Those spells all read the same to me when I compared them with the current version. Oh my god, it has a 1,000-foot burst? I've never noticed that before. That's pretty crazy. So with the items, what they're highlighting here is that they no longer require the traits for items currently to activate them, which are Envision, Interact, and Command. Just like with spells, you're just going to put in the traits like Manipulate, whatever's needed to do the activation action, which will have a game effect. However, this does bring up the same question I had before. Here I'm willing to accept that they don't have to speak in order to activate an item. This is not an anime, necessarily. Now with the talismans, I'm not quite sure what we're supposed to see here in these examples. They do say their goal is to make them more useful, powerful, and straightforward. Mesmerizing Opal is to help you feint in combat. What it currently does is, when you feint, you can, as a free action, get these changes to your action. What it does now is, it's a single action to do that feint with these changes to the feint action. I don't see the practical difference between the two. I suppose the intention is to make you not forget to use them, but I don't know if in actual play, having to decide to use it before you say you feint is actually going to help in that department. The Potency Crystal, which lets you do more damage and be more accurate with a strike, has more powerful versions, just as with our Runic Body and Runic Weapon spells. Sharktooth Charm, this is the one that helps you escape. The big news here is that the prerequisite to be an expert in acrobatics is gone. And that was a common complaint that people had, that items that improved a skill often required you to be quite good at the skill in order to have it, and people wanted to give it to the low acrobatics person in the party, for example, to help give them a leg up. This removes that restriction, which is welcome. However, the actual effects of the talismans do still look like they are the same. Okay, here's a big change. Creature abilities. Grab is no longer an automatic grapple of a PC. I thought it was interesting that they say it's mostly to benefit the PCs, because some of the discussion I saw online, well, first of all, now the monster has to roll a check to grapple a party member. So that sounds on the surface like it is helping the party members. Also, they said another goal was to not negate the feats or other ways to resist the listed abilities that did not function well under the current version. I'm not sure exactly what abilities they mean. Even freedom of movement doesn't prevent a grapple. It lets you escape a grapple without a check, but it doesn't prevent a grapple. So I'm assuming they're talking about abilities that increase your defense scores. But anyway, what's important here is that an enemy like the Kraken, some boss creature that has the grab ability, they not only are still almost certainly going to grapple you, but they now have a fair chance of restraining you, which means you can hardly do anything on your turn, including cast spells or make attacks. You're pretty much limited to escaping and thinking, recalling knowledge. It's actually a change I welcome. I like the monsters and the PC stats mattering, and that a character, let's say a dwarf fighter who's very indomitable, will not be grabbed easily, and they can point to their score as being like, huh, you thought you could, but you can't, because I'm me. But I do think it's also going to make those higher level creatures more dangerous that do grab and do knock down and do push. It's basically being extended to these other abilities. Next is the stuff on genies, which, unless there's something I'm missing, does not really show things that will change to the system in the remaster. If there's something I'm ignoring, I apologize. Someone should put it in the comments and I'll highlight it. But that's it. That's the preview we got of the remaster that comes out in November. So, were there things I missed? Were there things, opinions I expressed you disagreed with? Are there changes you think are good or those that are bad? Please comment below, and also like and subscribe while you're at it. I hope that this was informative. I plan to put out another video soon talking about the changes to names. I put up a poll on my Discord server asking people to vote on whether they prefer the new remaster names versus the original names. Join my Discord if you haven't yet. It's a great community where we get to vote on polls, talk about Pathfinder 2e, talk about gaming, and we also have Pathfinder 2e games that are organized from the server, including in our drop-in Pathfinder 2e organized play system, and also people who run the beginner box. Lastly, today was a time-sensitive video. I wanted to put it out right away, but most of my videos are released first to people who support my Patreon. You get 7-day early access to my videos, including videos like my recent Monk series and my Kineticist series, which is already up there. So if you haven't yet, definitely consider supporting the Patreon. Also, ring the bell. My Kineticist videos are going to come out soon, and I'm also going to have a live chat about D&D 4th edition when my group completes that later this week after having we will have played 6 sessions of it. So that's it. I have been Ronald the Rules Lawyer. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.